Sarah floated through the empty corridors of the Perseverance, her magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal floor. The ship had been her home for 43 years, and in all that time, she had never once heard another human voice except her own. The silence didn't bother her anymore. She had grown used to it, the way one grows used to an old scar. She made her way to the archive bay, where thousands of data cores hummed with the stored memories of Earth. Music, movies, books, photographs, medical records, architectural blueprints. Everything humanity had been, compressed into crystalline storage that would outlast the stars themselves. Sarah's job was simple: maintain the archives, catalog the data, and make sure that when humanity finally disappeared completely, something would remain to prove they had existed at all. Earth was gone. The sun had swelled into a red giant 300 years ago, just as the scientists had predicted. Most humans had already left by then, scattering to colony worlds across a dozen star systems. But time and distance had done what disaster could not. The colonies with other species, adapted to new worlds, changed their genetics to survive in alien environments. Within a few generations, there were no pure humans left. Just descendants, hybrids, people who carried human DNA but were something new, something different. Except Sarah. She was the last one who could look in a mirror and see what humans had actually looked like. The last one who breathed oxygen the way Earth's atmosphere had once provided it. The last one who could eat an apple and taste what her ancestors had tasted. She was a living fossil, and she knew it. The console beeped as she settled into her chair. Another day of cataloging, another 1,000 files to verify and preserve. She pulled up the queue and started working through the list. Ancient television broadcasts from the 21st century, a complete record of the Mars terraforming project, the genome sequence of the Bengal tiger, the last recording of whale song from Earth's oceans. Sarah paused at that one. She played the file, letting the haunting calls fill the archive bay. Whales had been extinct for 200 years before Earth died. She wondered if anyone in the galaxy even remembered they had existed. Probably not. There were so many extinct species now, so many dead worlds. The galaxy was old, and it had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. Her console beeped again, but this time it was different. Not the soft chime of a cataloging task, but a sharp alert. Incoming transmission. Sarah frowned. She rarely received messages. The Perseverance was registered with the Galactic Commerce Network, but most species didn't bother contacting a lonely archive ship drifting through empty space. She opened the transmission and froze. The frequency was wrong. It wasn't on any of the standard communication channels. It was broadcasting on the morning bands. Sarah had learned about the morning bands during her training. Every species in the galaxy knew about them. 12 million years ago, the Concordat of Eternal Voices had established a set of frequencies that were sacred, reserved. Those frequencies were only used for one purpose: to broadcast memorials for extinct species. When a civilization died out completely, other species would send messages of remembrance on the morning bands. Poems, recordings, historical summaries. A way to say, "You existed, you mattered, we remember you." But no one ever answered a morning band transmission. That was the most fundamental rule in galactic society. The dead didn't speak. To answer would be blasphemy, a violation of the natural order. Sarah had heard stories of species who had tried it millions of years ago, before the protocols were established. Something called the echoes had broadcast corrupted signals that drove entire civilizations mad. The morning bands had been quarantined after that, made sacred, protected by absolute taboo. And yet here was a transmission, clearly labeled as a morning band broadcast, and it was about humanity. Sarah's hand shook as she opened the file. The message was from the Collective, an aquatic species from the Hydrus region. Sarah remembered them vaguely. Earth had traded with a few colonies back in the early expansion days. They had been kind, curious, interested in human art and music. The message played. It wasn't spoken in words exactly. The communicated through color patterns and fluid harmonics, but the ship's translator rendered it into English. Sarah listened and felt tears running down her face before she realized she was crying. They spoke of humanity with love. They described the first time they had heard human music, how strange and beautiful it had seemed. They talked about human curiosity, the reckless way humans explored dangerous places just to see what was there. They mentioned human art, the paintings and sculptures and stories that captured both the terrible and wonderful aspects of existence. They mourned humanity's contradictions, the way humans could be cruel and kind, destructive and creative, all at the same time. You were magnificent, the message said. You were brief like all bright things, but you burned with such intensity. We are lessened by your absence. The galaxy is quieter without your voice. We remember you. We will always remember you. The transmission ended. Sarah sat in silence, staring at the console. No one had ever said such things to her while she was alive. No one had ever told her that humanity mattered, that they were missed, that the galaxy was worse off without them. She had spent 43 years alone, preserving memories that she thought no one would ever care about. And here was proof that someone had cared. Someone had noticed. Someone had remembered. Her hand moved to the communication controls before she could think about what she was doing. She was lonely. She had been lonely for so long that it had become part of her, like her heartbeat or her breathing. And for just a moment she wanted to reach back, to tell someone, I'm here. We're not completely gone. Thank you for remembering us. She typed out a simple message. We lived, I remain, thank you for remembering us. Her finger hovered over the transmit button. She knew what she was about to do. She knew it was forbidden. But the had reached out into the void to speak to the dead, and she couldn't let them think no one had heard. She pressed the button. The message transmitted on the morning band frequency, broadcasting outward at the speed of light. Sarah sat back in her chair, suddenly exhausted. What had she done? She had broken the most fundamental taboo in galactic society. But she didn't feel guilty. She felt relieved. For the first time in decades, she had connected with someone. She had been seen. An hour passed. Then two. Sarah tried to go back to her cataloging work, but she couldn't focus. She kept glancing at the communication console, expecting something, though she didn't know what. Then the alerts started. The first one came from the automated relay stations that dotted the shipping lanes. Anomalous transmission detected on morning band frequency. Please verify. Sarah deleted it and moved on. The second alert came from a Concordat monitoring station. Unauthorized morning band activity detected. Source identification required. Sarah's stomach tightened. The third alert came from everywhere at once. Every receiver-equipped civilization in 3 galactic arms had registered her transmission. The networks were lighting up with traffic, all of it confused, alarmed, disbelieving. A dead species had spoken. The impossible had happened. Sarah watched as the galaxy's communication networks began to fall silent. Not because the signals stopped, but because no one knew what to say. Billions of civilizations, countless species, all holding their breath in the face of something that shouldn't exist. Her console began filling with incoming messages, not from automated systems but from actual people. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands. They came from species Sarah had never heard of, from regions of the galaxy she had never visited. All of them asking the same questions. How are you alive? Are you real? What does this mean? Sarah stared at the flood of messages, overwhelmed. She had wanted connection, but this was something else entirely. This was attention on a scale she couldn't process. The entire galaxy had just turned its eyes toward her tiny ship, floating alone in the dark. A priority transmission cut through the noise. It came from the Concordat Central Authority, marked with emergency protocols. Sarah opened it with shaking hands. This is High Command of the Concordat of Eternal Voices. The source of the unauthorized morning band transmission is commanded to cease all communications immediately and await contact. Any further transmissions will be considered an act of hostility against galactic stability. Compliance is not optional. Sarah closed the message. She looked around her empty ship, at the archives humming quietly in their storage bays, at the viewport showing nothing but distant stars. She thought about this message, about how they had remembered humanity with love. She thought about all the species whose messages now filled her queue, asking if she was real. She opened a new transmission window. This time she addressed it to everyone. To every ship, every station, every world with a receiver. She kept it simple. My name is Sarah, I am human. I am the last of my kind and I am alive. I heard your memorial and I wanted you to know that someone listened. That someone cared, that you remembered. I'm sorry if I broke your rules, but the dead should have witnesses and the living should know that their memories matter. I am here. We were here. And I will answer anyone who speaks to us because that's what humans do. We answer. We reach back. We don't go quietly into the dark. She transmitted the message and sat back. Within minutes, the galaxy's silence broke. But this time it wasn't confusion. It was chaos. Fleets began to mobilize. Factions formed. Debates erupted across 1,000 worlds. And Sarah, the last human, sat alone in her ship and waited to see what happened when you made the dead speak. She didn't have to wait long. 3 days after Sarah's second transmission, the first ship arrived. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Perseverance, with a hull that shimmered like water under sunlight. A vessel. Sarah watched it approach through her viewport, her heart hammering in her chest. She had no weapons, no defenses. If they were here to silence her, she couldn't stop them. The communication request came through standard channels this time. Sarah accepted it. A holographic display flickered to life, showing an ambassador. The creature was beautiful in an alien way, its translucent body rippling with colors that the translator rendered into emotional context. Right now, those colors spoke of distress and confusion. Sarah, the said, its voice like water flowing over stones. We are the ones who sent the memorial. We did not expect a response. We did not intend to cause this chaos. Sarah met its eyes, or what she assumed were its eyes. I know, I'm sorry. I was alone and you were kind and I just wanted to say thank you. The colors shifted to something softer. You have broken the galaxy's most sacred law. Do you understand what you've done? I answered a message meant for me, Sarah said quietly. That's all. That's everything, the replied. For 12 million years the mourning bands have been silent. One way. We speak to the dead and the dead do not answer. That is the order of things. That is how we process loss, how we remember, how we move forward. You have shattered that certainty. Maybe it needed to be shattered, Sarah said. She surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. You sent that message because you thought no one would hear it. You poured your heart into words meant for ghosts, but I heard every word and it meant something to me. It meant everything to me. Doesn't that matter? There was silence for a long moment, its colors shifting through patterns Sarah couldn't interpret. Finally, it spoke. The Concordat is convening an emergency session. They have dispatched a fleet to your location. They will arrive within a week. And then what? Sarah asked. And then they will decide what to do with you. There are factions forming already. Some species believe you should be preserved as a living artifact. Others believe you should be silenced to restore order. And some, the colors darkened. Some believe you are a sign of something worse coming, that if the dead can speak, then the galaxy itself is breaking down. Sarah laughed, though there was no humor in it. I'm just one person. I can't break the galaxy. Perhaps not, the said, but you have broken something, and now we must all decide what comes next. I wanted to reach you first to warn you. The Concordat will not be gentle. They will see you as a threat. I'm not a threat, Sarah said. I'm just lonely. The colors shifted to something that might have been sympathy. Sometimes those are the same thing. I must go. Our delegation will remain in this region, but we cannot protect you from what is coming. I am sorry, Sarah. I am sorry that our memorial led to this. The hologram flickered out. Sarah sat alone in the dark again, but this time the darkness felt different, heavier, more ominous. Over the next several days, more ships arrived. They positioned themselves at a respectful distance from the Perseverance, maintaining what Sarah assumed was some kind of neutral observation zone. She received dozens of communication requests, but she ignored most of them. Representatives from the Historians Guild, scientists who wanted to study her, journalists who wanted her story. She wasn't ready to talk to any of them. But she did read the messages that continued to flood her inbox. Most were from ordinary people, members of species she'd never heard of, asking questions about humanity. What was Earth like? What did humans eat? What kind of music did they make? Sarah found herself answering these messages late at night, unable to sleep. She sent them recordings of rain on Earth's oceans, recipes for bread, symphonies and rock music and ancient folk songs. She told them about books and movies, about human history, about all the things her species had done wrong and all the things they'd done right. And slowly, she noticed something strange. Other species were starting to answer their own morning bands. A message from an individual, responding to a memorial sent for their extinct colony ship. A broadcast from a Selene collective, reaching back to answer a tribute to their lost home world. These weren't species that were dead. They were fragments, survivors, last remnants who had been presumed extinct but were still clinging to existence in forgotten corners of the galaxy. Sarah wasn't alone. There were others like her, other last survivors who had heard their own memorials and decided to break the silence. The galaxy's communication networks were in chaos. The Concordat issued statements demanding compliance, threatening sanctions, calling for order. But the voices kept coming, kept answering, kept refusing to be silenced. On the sixth day, Sarah received a communication request marked with Concordat authority codes. She almost ignored it, but something made her accept. The hologram that appeared was like nothing Sarah had ever seen. The creature was silicon-based, its body a crystalline structure that refracted light into rainbow patterns. Its voice was ancient, carrying harmonics that suggested of existence. Sarah, I am keeper of forgotten protocols, of the Vex Collective. I am one of the architects of the original morning band protocols, established 11.7 million years ago. Sarah's breath caught. You're here to stop me. Perhaps, the Vex said. Or perhaps I am here to witness what you have begun. We are 4 hours from your location. The fleet arrives in 2 days. I wish to speak with you before they arrive, before the Concordat makes its decision. I wish to understand why you broke our most sacred law. Why does it matter? Sarah asked, suddenly tired. You're going to silence me anyway. I am not certain of that, the Vex said, and something in its voice made Sarah look closer at the hologram. I have lived for 7 million years, Sarah. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched the galaxy evolve and change. And in all that time, I have never seen anyone do what you did. You are either the greatest fool in galactic history, or you are something else entirely. I need to know which. Sarah thought about it for a moment. Then she said, come aboard, I'll tell you everything. The Vex's ship docked with the Perseverance 3 hours later. Sarah waited in the main airlock, nervous despite herself. She had never met anyone so old, so important. The airlock cycled open, and the Vex floated through, its crystalline body moving without any visible means of propulsion. Up close, it was even more strange. Sarah could see patterns moving through its structure, like thoughts made visible. The Vex studied her with what might have been eyes, though they looked more like clusters of geometric shapes. You are very small, the Vex observed. Humans usually are, Sarah replied. And yet you have caused the largest disruption to galactic society in 10 million years. Remarkable. The Vex moved past her, floating through the corridors as if it knew where it was going. Show me your archives. Sarah followed, confused but compliant. She led the Vex to the archive bay, where the data cores hummed with stored memories. The Vex approached them, and patterns of light flickered across its surface. It was reading the data directly, Sarah realized, absorbing it at speeds no organic mind could match. Fascinating, the Vex murmured. Such diversity, such creativity. Your species was very young, very brief, but very intense. It turned to face Sarah. Tell me why you answered this memorial. Sarah took a breath. Because I was alone. Because someone remembered us and I wanted them to know that their memory mattered. Because if I didn't answer, then humanity really was dead and I couldn't accept that. Not yet. You broke a 12-million-year-old law because you were lonely. Yes, Sarah said simply. The Vex was silent for a long time. Then it said something Sarah didn't expect. The morning band protocols were not created for the reasons most species believe. They were not created to honor the dead or to process grief. They were created to maintain order. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Millions of years ago, before the protocols, extinction was a source of chaos. Species would cling to hope, searching for survivors, refusing to accept finality. Resources would be wasted on rescue missions for civilizations that were already gone. The galaxy was unstable, driven by false hope and the inability to let go. The Vex's patterns shifted, becoming darker. We created the morning bands to enforce finality, to make extinction clean and absolute. When a species died, we would say goodbye and then we would move on. No second chances, no lingering questions. That's cruel, Sarah said. That was stability, the Vex corrected. Or so we believed. But now you have shown us something we did not anticipate. You answered, and you were not corrupted like the echoes. You did not drive civilizations mad. You simply proved that extinction is not always as final as we declared it to be. So what happens now? Sarah asked. The Vex turned to fully face her. That depends on what I tell the Concordat when they arrive. I could tell them you are a dangerous anomaly that must be contained. I could tell them you are proof that the old protocols still work, that you should be silenced to preserve order. Or, the Vex paused, I could tell them the truth. What truth? That we have been lying to ourselves for 12 million years. That we created the morning band protocols not to honor the dead, but to forget them more easily. That we turned extinction into a clean, simple process because we were afraid of the alternative. And that you, Sarah, last human, have reminded us of what we tried to forget. Sarah stared at the ancient being. What are you saying? I am saying that there are others, the Vex said quietly. Hidden on quarantine frequencies, deeper in the morning bands than anyone is allowed to search. Other survivors, other last remnants, broadcasting faintly, hoping someone will answer. The Concordat has known about them for millions of years. We ignore them. We let them fade. We tell ourselves it is mercy, that it is better to let extinction complete itself naturally. But perhaps it is just cowardice. How many? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. Species reduced to single individuals or small groups, or frozen genetic material waiting for someone to revive them. All of them calling out on frequencies we declared forbidden. The Vex's patterns flickered with something that might have been shame. All of them dying alone, because we decided that order was more important than survival. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. You knew they were there. You knew there were others like me, and you just let them die. Yes, the Vex said simply. And I have spent the last million years wondering if we made the right choice. Now you have given me the answer. We did not. The Vex floated closer, its crystalline structure refracting the archive bay's lights into 1,000 colors. The Concordat fleet arrives in less than 2 days. They will demand that you cease all transmissions, that you accept containment, or they will silence you by force. You have 3 choices, Sarah. What choices? You can comply, accept containment, live out your days in peaceful imprisonment, and let the galaxy return to the order we have maintained for millions of years. The Vex paused. You can resist. Continue broadcasting, force the Concordat to act and become a martyr. Your death might inspire others, but you will not live to see it. Or, Sarah asked, Or you can do what humans have always done best. You can break everything. The Vex's patterns shifted into something that might have been a smile, though Sarah wasn't sure silicon-based life forms could smile. I can give you the locations of those hidden frequencies. You can broadcast them to the entire galaxy. You can challenge every species to answer the question, do we value order more than life? Do we let the almost dead fade, or do we reach out and pull them back? Sarah's heart was pounding. That would destroy the Concordat. Perhaps, the Vex agreed. Or perhaps it would remind us what the Concordat was supposed to be, a collective of voices working together, not a mechanism for enforcing silence. Why are you telling me this? Sarah asked. You helped create these protocols. You've spent millions of years enforcing them. Why help me break them now? The Vex was quiet for a moment. Then it said, because I am old, Sarah, so old that I have forgotten what it means to be surprised. But you surprised me. You broke a law that no one has broken in 12 million years, and you did it not for power or profit or ideology. You did it because you were lonely and someone was kind to you, and you wanted to say thank you. The patterns in its crystalline structure flickered rapidly. That is the most human thing I have ever witnessed. And it made me remember why we created the mourning bands in the first place. Not to enforce order, but to ensure that no one would be forgotten. We lost sight of that purpose long ago. Perhaps it is time to remember. The Vex extended something that might have been a limb, and a small data crystal materialized in the air between them. Sarah took it carefully. The locations are encrypted, but your systems can decode them. What you do with this information is your choice. I will return to my ship now. The Concordat will ask me what I found here, and I will tell them the truth. I found a human who reminded me what it means to remember. What will they do to you? Sarah asked. Nothing, the Vex said. I am too old, too important to the foundational structures of the Concordat. They will dismiss my words as the ravings of an ancient being losing touch with reality. But you, Sarah, you are different. You are young. You are passionate. You are proof that extinction is not the end we have declared it to be. What you do in the next 48 hours will determine the future of the galaxy. The Vex floated toward the airlock, then paused. I hope you choose to break everything. I have lived in this ordered galaxy for 7 million years. I think it is time for some chaos. Then it was gone, and Sarah was alone again with the data crystal in her hand. She returned to the archive bay and loaded the crystal into her systems. The decryption took an hour, but when it was complete, Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief. Hundreds of coordinates, each one marking a location where signals were broadcasting on deep mourning band frequencies. Signals from survivors, from the almost extinct, from species that the galaxy had written off as dead. Sarah thought about the Concordat fleet arriving in less than 2 days. She thought about the choice the Vex had given her: compliance, martyrdom, or revolution. She thought about this memorial and how it had made her feel seen for the first time in decades. She thought about humanity and how they had always reached out, always explored, always refused to accept that any mystery was beyond their grasp. She opened a new broadcast window. This time, she didn't hesitate. She addressed it to everyone, every receiver in the galaxy, and she attached the coordinates from the Vex's crystal. My name is Sarah, and I am the last human. 3 days ago, I broke the most sacred law in galactic society because someone remembered my species with love, and I wanted to say thank you. Since then, I have learned something that I think you all need to know. She paused, gathering her thoughts, then continued. The mourning bands were created to honor the dead, but they have become something else. They have become a tool to enforce finality, to make extinction clean and simple, to let us forget more easily. And in doing so, we have abandoned hundreds of species who are not quite dead, but not quite alive. Survivors who broadcast on hidden frequencies, hoping someone will answer, hoping someone will care enough to reach back. Sarah pulled up the coordinate list on her screen. I am transmitting the locations of these signals now. I am sharing them with everyone because I believe the galaxy needs to make a choice. Do we value order more than life? Do we let these survivors fade because it is easier than helping them? Or do we answer? Do we reach out? Do we prove that memory is more than just words sent into the void? She took a breath. The Concordat is coming for me. They will tell you that I am dangerous, that I am breaking the natural order, that I must be silenced. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am dangerous, but I would rather be dangerous than silent. I would rather break everything than let one more species die alone, thinking no one cared. Sarah leaned closer to the camera. I am transmitting these coordinates on every frequency I can access. I am asking you all to listen, to search, to answer. If you find a signal from a species you thought was extinct, reach out to them. Tell them they are not forgotten. Tell them they matter. Tell them the galaxy is better with them in it. She smiled, though her eyes were bright with unshed tears. That is what the told humanity, and it saved me. It gave me hope when I thought there was none left. Let us do the same for others. Let us turn the morning bands into something new. Not a frequency for the dead, but a network for the almost dead. A way to pull each other back from the edge. A way to say, we see you, we hear you, we refuse to let you go. Sarah reached for the transmit button one last time. The Concordat will call this chaos. I call it hope. Choose wisely, galaxy. Choose quickly. The dead are listening, and they deserve an answer. She transmitted the message and sat back, exhausted. Within seconds, her console exploded with activity. Messages flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Some praised her. Some cursed her. Some asked for clarification, for guidance, for permission. But the most important messages came from ships already changing course, heading toward the coordinates she had transmitted. Historians, scientists, rescue teams, volunteers. Thousands of vessels representing hundreds of species, all making the same choice. They were going to answer. Sarah watched the chaos unfold on her monitors, and for the first time since Earth had died, she felt something like hope. The Concordat fleet would arrive soon. They would be furious. They might try to silence her, but it was too late. The galaxy had heard her message, and enough of them had chosen to act. The morning bands would never be the same again. Sarah, the last human, leaned back in her chair and smiled. She had done what humans always did best. She had reached out into the unknown, refused to accept the way things were, and changed everything. And if the galaxy broke because of it, well, maybe it needed breaking. The dead were speaking now, and the living were finally listening.